What's up, movie viewers? Dena Views and Reviews here. Asking, what you watching? Well, today I am watching Big George Foreman, starring Chris Davis, Forrest Whitaker, Sonia Son, Sullivan James, Jasmine Matthews. Screenplay by Frank Baldwin, George Tillman Jr., and story by Dan Gordon, Frank Baldwin, and George Tillman Jr. It is directed also by George Tillman Jr. and produced by David Zellin. Now, Big George Foreman, the miraculous story of the once and future heavyweight champion of the world. At the beginning of this movie, we hear Chris Davis, who is the actor that is playing George Foreman, and he is narrating these words. He says, I was 28 years old when I died. And as the movie title indicates, it is a biographical film of sorts about the life of George Foreman. It includes his struggles and hardships, his teasing, dealing with rage, and being able to channel it in order to change his circumstances. How he uses physical strength and faith to descend out of poverty into wealth. The movie chronicles his journey from poverty to financial success, from becoming the heavyweight boxing champion to becoming a preacher and a youth mentor, and of course, a master of the infamous George Foreman grill. Now, when the movie opens up, it shows the degree of poverty that George Foreman was born into. Foreman was born in Marshall, Texas in 1949. His mother and his 6 siblings faced extreme poverty growing up in Houston, Texas. And as always, shall I say often, the movie did not reference his father. The movie just, there was no father represented, and maybe it got past me, but I saw not even a denotation of his father or even the mother's spouse for that matter. Although I did read that his mother was married at one time to a man that was not his biological father. This is a very commonplace thing today in movies, but I, for one, always am very curious as to where the father is. Was he alive? Is he away for some unknown reason? And of course, what would that reason be for him not being in the lives of his child or children, or at least offering some form of financial assistance in his absence? That is always something that I observe, and I like to examine and have a better understanding as to why the absent parent has chosen not to partake in the child's life, an active role in the child's life or rearing of the child or children. Nevertheless, Foreman and his 6 siblings, along with his mother, are dropped off in this dilapidated house with no electricity. His mother, Nancy, which you can tell just by looking at her that she is just a hardworking religious person. Well, she lets them know that she will have to work to get the electricity turned on. And her interest is concerned in taking care of her family, her children. She's trying to do the best that she possibly can. Even on the night that they are in this house, for dinner, she takes one hamburger and she divides it among all of her children. And George declares that he is so hungry that he could eat the table. And his sister Mary actually breaks him off a piece of her very small portion of the sandwich. What a sweet gesture. Now, George Foreman, as we know, he grew up very poor and was in need of basic things, and as usual, he was often teased by other children. So he would respond by fighting. He would fight them, and he admits even in the narration that all his life he had to fight. Truthfully though, some children are just picky and tormentors of others, and that is often, I think, a learned behavior or reflection of their parents or even their environment. And I never could understand this as a child. I couldn't even understand that practice, particularly among my own community of people, because most of the time the mockers is as in need as the person that they are making fun of. in the same condition. They are often poor themselves, but some just like making fun of others, and is why it is good to teach our children compassion for others who look like them, as well as not just those that we see on TV that may be in need or from other communities or groups, including those we read about or are told that we should have compassion for. Have compassion for your own. I am a firm believer that it's better to teach our children to want for those in your home, your siblings, your community, or surroundings, what you want for yourself. Now, at age 15, Foreman dropped out of school and he took on mugging people for money. Now, in this movie, it shows him attempting to mug what he thought was an inebriated black male. And it turned out to be an undercover cop that was just pretending to be drunk to catch the perpetrators of these crimes. George and his accomplice ran away once they discovered whom he was. And Foreman hid himself under a house, and he had to cover himself in raw sewer to prevent the police dog, the canine, from sniffing him out. Now, when the coast was clear, on his way home, he saw an ad for Job Corps playing in a window of a store, so he convinced his mom to let him join. Now, at Job Corps, he felt he could earn his GED and get some type of training. That way he could better himself. But it was here that he befriended a character called Desmond, and that would later become his money manager. And he also befriended one of the people that worked there. His name was Doc Brodus, and he is played by Forrest Whitaker, who was actually about to kick him out of Job Corps once again for fighting and destroying property. But he gave him another chance and introduced him to the sport and taught him how to focus his rage through boxing. And eventually he moved to Pleasanton, California, and began his boxing training. I did read somewhere that Foreman was originally interested in playing football and idolized Jim Brown, but he eventually ended up with boxing. But Foreman took well to his training and learning how to box in the Job Corps. And I read that it was in Oregon, but from there, he competed and went on to win the gold medal in heavyweight boxing at the 1968 Olympic Games in Mexico City. He stood 6'3" and weighed 218 pounds. Foreman also captured the professional weight belt by knocking out Joe Frazier in 2 rounds in January of 1973, and that was in Kingston, Jamaica. Foreman went on to win his first 37 professional matches, 34 of them by knockout. He even KO'd smoking Joe Frazier after just 2 rounds, as I've said before, and this made him the heavyweight champ. But in 1974, this young and strong Foreman was scheduled to fight the very, very popular Muhammad Ali in Kinshasa, Zaire. And this was a match that was labeled the Rumble in the Jungle, and one he was highly favored and expected to win very easily. It was a very infamous fight, still mentioned and watched to this very day. Big George Foreman, as he was called, like I said, he won about 40 of his professional matches at this point, and 24 consecutive knockouts. Now, Foreman would later go on to explain that he suffered a cut above his eye at the time of the match between him and Ali in Africa. So the match had to be postponed for a month, which would give his a cut above his eye, an opportunity to heal. But while Foreman was on the heel and mending, Muhammad Ali remained in Africa, in Zaire to be exact, and getting to know the locals there. He ingratiated himself into the public, and all the while he was there, he was mocking and insulting Foreman every chance he got. Anywhere he was just talking about um, Foreman negatively. So although Foreman was favored and expected to destroy Muhammad based on how he toppled Joe Frazier, who was said to be the toughest and the best boxer at that time, Foreman did not hesitate to make quick work of him and this guy, Ken Norton. And he did it in 2 rounds. So Foreman was expected to easily take out Muhammad Ali in this so-called historic matchup that was promoted all around the country, all around the world as the Rumble in the Jungle. When Foreman and Ali finally met in that ring, he was outscoring Foreman to begin with. He was punching him with speed. But in the second round, Ali began to retreat to the ropes. He would lean into the ropes all while covering his head, but still hitting Foreman in his face every now and again. Foreman was continuously giving Ali some brutal punches to the body and into his side. Ali just kept leaning his head back on the ropes, which Foreman said later he believed were unusually loose. Little did Foreman know this was all a part of a strategy by Muhammad Ali to lean back and wait for Foreman to tire himself out. He would get in a couple of licks to his head, but Ali called it the rope-a-dope. Muhammad Ali continued to take heavy punishment to his body in order for the opportunity to land some of those hard punches to Foreman's head. Now, Ali later admitted that he was out on his feet twice during the bout. As Foreman began to tire himself out from all of the punching, he began to lose that initial power that he had when he first came in. And he was increasingly beginning to hit wild and uncontrollably with his punches. So Ali started to taunt him again. He saw that Foreman was clearly exhausted. He'd exhausted himself out so much so to the point that he was unable to even land effective blows to Ali. So Foreman's arms were like rubber. And in the 8th round, Ali came off the ropes and with a series of right hooks to the side and the back of Foreman's head, these blows left him dazed and confused. Muhammad Ali just up and opened a can of whoop ass, and with that final left hook and straight right flush to the jaw, Foreman fell, windmilling down to the floor of the ring. And that was the very first time that Foreman had ever been down in his career. The stronger Foreman on October 30th, 1974 had suffered a surprising loss to the underdog, Muhammad Ali. He had fell victim to the rope-a-dope at the Rumble in the Jungle. And as a result, Foreman was forced to relinquish his championship title. Now, about 3 years later, Big George, as he was referred to, was deemed to have had a religious experience in his dressing room after losing a fight. This is what was referred to as his death, and I guess to him it was a rebirth. After the experience, he reaffirmed his religious faith in Jesus and decided to retire from boxing, becoming an ordained minister in Houston, and he founded a community youth center, which was a good thing. Foreman even went and apologized for the hate that he had for Muhammad Ali. They showed this in the film, in real life, and I am told they even managed to become really good friends. Now, in the movie, like I said, he's at the youth center and he's walking up the stairs and the lights go out. And he tells the children and everyone else not to be alarmed. And this is when he discovers that all of the millions of dollars that he'd earned and entrusted his friend Desmond, that's from Job Corps, to manage properly, that it was all gone. The movie did not go into further details about this shiesty character, Desmond, and I found that a bit odd. But Foreman discovered he was broke. He was down to only $2,000 in the bank after making millions over millions of dollars. But he had no choice then but to return to the ring at age 38, and he won his second heavyweight title, and in 1994 at the age of 45 by defeating his much younger opponent, 26-year-old Michael Moorer, in the 10th round of their WBA fight in Las Vegas. Foreman became the WBA and IBF champ, wearing the same red trunks worn when he lost to Muhammad Ali. Now, in March 1995, he was stripped of his title because someone else has to take it on. You can't keep it forever. But he was stripped of his title after refusing to fight the number one contender, Tony Tucker, and gave up his IBF title in June 1995, refusing a rematch with Axel Schultz, whom there was some controversy over the judges' decisions anyway. But Foreman's last fight was in 1997, where he lost to Shannon Briggs. He retired with a lifetime record of 76-5. Oh my goodness. That's amazing. Now, I would have to give this movie I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. It is not a bad movie. It just kind of moves fast in certain things, and I kind of felt like much was omitted or even glossed over perhaps. But I have to admit, though, I kept waiting for the movie to get into how he established himself as this entrepreneur with the hugely popular and very successful George Foreman grill, which is really how I originally heard of him. My mother eventually told me about him being more than just a rich info salesman, but a very successful boxer. But the movie literally only hints at his success with the George Foreman grill. I don't even think they even called it that in the movie, perhaps for legal reasons. But 55 million of the grills have been sold by 2009. Today, that number is probably way above or closer to 100 million, and it's still selling. In fact, my daughter swears by them, and she even bought me one. It is reported that in 1999, George Foreman was paid $138 million by Salton Incorporated to buy out the right to use his name for the George Foreman grill. Now, the movie did indicate some of his wife's displeasure with his cheating, his first wife, and his running around. But imagine my surprise when I found out that he has a total of 12 children. I'd only heard about the 5 boys named George Foreman and a daughter that he has named Georgetta. But I will admit, I thought that was cute and so adorable when I heard it. But I was shocked to find out that he has 12 children. The movie only shows him having 2 wives, but in actuality, George Foreman has been married 5 times. He has been with his 5th wife for many decades, so those 12 children are from those 5 women. That I think, at least I think they are. Well, Foreman has 10 biological children and adopted 2 daughters, which explains the total of 12 children that this movie conveniently left out. I don't know if they kind of felt it would taint the emotional aspect of his life and his reinvention story or something, but it is what it is, and that is just as much a part of his life story as any other feature, I would say. Now, the George Foreman character said in the movie, "I've been fighting all my life because I felt hated by the world, but I've changed," he said. He had to get knocked down all the way to the bottom for him to find himself, only to learn everything he was searching for was already there. It is believed that Foreman currently continues to preach at his church and run his youth center in Houston, Texas. That was a wonderful story. But Big George Foreman is rated TV PG-13. And if you would like to check this movie out, you most certainly can, because it is now streaming on Netflix. If you have not already, be sure to subscribe and leave me your comments on this Big George Foreman movie. This has been Dena Views and Reviews. Join me for my next movie review and a recommendation. I will be giving my view on Who is Aaron Carter. And I want you to remember, it's my view. Now, what you watching?